What's up, everybody? It's Tom Pelissero here on the USA Today Sports Facebook page, back for another live chat and a rare one on a Sunday morning. A pregame chat here. I'm usually at a game on Sunday mornings. NFL restrictions prevent me from doing Facebook Live in the press box, but they can't stop me in my basement. So let's talk about today's games. Bring out all your rants, raves, questions, whatever you want to talk about the NFL heading into the 12th Sunday of the season. Leave it in the comments, and we'll get to some of those throughout the course of this live broadcast. I think one game that immediately jumps out to me, the Arizona Cardinals and the Atlanta Falcons, two teams that are in different spots right now. The Falcons atop their division in the NFC South have played some pretty good football offensively through the course of the season, but are challenged from a defensive perspective. Can they get that offense rolling? They get one key guy back in Tevin Coleman. Keep an eye on him today. A speed threat sort of a player. I think can do some different things from what Devontae Freeman does. Kyle Shanahan's done a phenomenal job of spreading the football around the field through the course of the season. Coleman gives them another weapon as he gets back into the lineup. And for the Arizona Cardinals, a weird week for them with Bruce Arians going into the hospital. Coming out of that, he's going to coach today in Atlanta. An offense that, through the course of the season just hasn't been the same. And it's perplexed some people within the league. When they look at this Arizona Cardinals team, they go back to a year ago and look at the things that they were doing well. David Johnson continuing to develop into a better and better player, but the receivers have not played particularly well for the Cardinals. Carson Palmer has not played particularly well. They've been banged up along the offensive line. It sounds like they're going to shuffle that group again heading into this game. And defensively, they've got some big brute forces up front. That's sort of how the Cardinals defense has been defined. They do have a couple of playmakers on the back end. We'll see how Patrick Peterson is able to do against Julio Jones today. Of course, Tyrann Mathieu, another guy who does a lot of positive things for him when he is healthy. For the Cardinals, you lose this game, you're putting yourself in a really tough spot. And you already have after the loss last week at Minnesota. That was one that you had to have. You didn't get it. Now let's see what goes into Atlanta here. Again, in a very strange week for the Arizona Cardinals. That's probably the best game on the docket in my mind. I'm also intrigued by the Bengals and Baltimore Ravens game. That game's in Baltimore. Of course, the Bengals lost A.J. Green last week. They lost Gio Bernard last week. They're going to have to re-envision some things offensively, but I think that that's something that you could make the argument they should have done a while ago. They just haven't really had an identity under Ken Zampese this season. They have not run the football effectively. A.J. Green has sort of been their offense. I actually think Andy Dalton has done an awfully good job, especially when he gets there. He didn't have Tyler Eifert early on in the season. Now Green's being hurt. And the lack of a running game. If the Bengals are able to win this game, I know that so much has gone wrong for them. We've talked about Marvin Lewis and his job situation. But if you beat the Ravens, you're right back into it in an AFC North division that at this point is wide open. The Steelers, for all their problems, beat the Colts on Thursday night. Sees first place in the division, but as we've seen over and over, nobody's been able to hold on to that spot for long. I still think the Steelers are the most talented team in the division. I think they're the most dangerous because with that offense, with Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, they're a threat to put up 30, 35 points every single time out. I don't see the Bengals doing that without A.J. Green. I certainly don't see the Ravens doing it. They've gotten by with defense this season. I think it's going to be a low-scoring, slug-it-out type of affair, and we'll see whether or not the Bengals, for one thing, are able to be disciplined enough but also have enough offensive productivity to be able to get a big win in that game. Some other ones on the slate, certainly the Rams at Saints is intriguing because the Saints are hanging around in that NFC South. Same thing with the Carolina Panthers coming out in their game later on this afternoon at Oakland. That's an upset special for me. I haven't had the greatest record on the upset specials, but when I look at some of the matchups there, when I look at the way that the Raiders defense has struggled, dead last in yards per play, dead last in sacks per pass play, and a Panthers offense that does still have the reigning MVP Cam Newton that can attack you in ways that nobody else in the league can because of Newton's presence. And they do have some weapons in the passing game. They're going to miss Luke Kuechly. From what I was told, and I wrote a story about it for USA Today, you can find it on the website. Kuechly is making positive progress right now. He talked by phone to the same specialist, Mickey Collins, up in Pittsburgh, who examined him after a concussion a year ago. Sounds like everybody was satisfied with where he is. There's no talk of shutting Kuechly down for the season, but he is out for this game against the Raiders. Let's see how Oakland tries to attack the middle of the field. All right, bring on the questions, and keep leaving them in the comments, and we'll get to those as we count down to kickoff here. First from Eric, Tim Hightower or Rashard Matthews, half PPR. Fantasy questions, Eric. These are difficult in my world. The fact that Hightower has been nicked up through the course this week, you did not know whether or not he was going to be able to play, limited practice time. Those are concerns, but I think you pretty much know what you're going to get from Hightower week in and week out. With Rashard Matthews, I just don't know that you're going to see the Titans throw the football a whole lot in this game. They're facing a Bears team that's starting Matt Barkley at quarterback. This is easily the ranking for the one that I would find the most unwatchable game of this entire weekend. The Titans know what they are. They want to run the football with DeMarco Murray as well as with Derrick Henry. They want to grind it down. They want to eat on the ground and then let Marcus Mariota do a little bit in the passing game to be able to supplement that. I think that they're going to win big in this game, which I've never said I don't think about the Titans in years and years of covering the NFL. It's been a long time since they've looked like a competent football team, and I'll give them that. They are competent. I'm not saying they're a runaway Super Bowl threat right now, but they're in the mix in the AFC South, and they're facing a Bears team that's been banged with injuries worse than anybody else in the league. Barkley, maybe he's not even an NFL caliber quarterback as a backup, much less a starter in this game. To say nothing of the fact that his weaponry has been depleted, his offensive line has been depleted. This just has disaster written all over it, in my mind, for the Chicago Bears. Keep those questions coming. Another, certainly an impactful thing from a fantasy perspective as well as from a real-life perspective, Rob Gronkowski, active for the New England Patriots, as is Martellus Bennett, as is Julian Edelman, and Tom Brady with his sore knee, showing once again that you really can't trust anything that might be coming out about the Patriots from an injury perspective early on in the week, and especially when they have a habit like probably nobody else in the league of listing almost everybody on their roster as questionable heading into the week. With Gronkowski, and along with Bennett, along with Edelman, plus Amendola, plus Chris Hogan, they are, I think, the toughest team in terms of a matchup perspective in the entire league, just because of the way they can spread you out. That's without even mentioning the backfield with Blunt, with Deion Lewis potentially coming back here at some point. And taking on his former role. With James White, they can hit you in so many different directions, and they've still got Brady pulling the trigger, a guy who knows defenses as well as any quarterback in the entire NFL. I think the Patriots are a really, really dangerous team from a matchup perspective, especially on offense. They got some things they got to figure out defensively, and what better way than taking on a Jets team that simply has not had any sort of offensive identity this season. They were hurt when Decker went out. I think that was a big part of this. Ryan Fitzpatrick has not played well. They've gone back and forth. This one, to me, is going to be a Patriots route, and I think that they're going to be able, whether they want to run it, although, the Jets have a pretty good front. This could be a game that we saw the Patriots do it a year ago where they just throw it over and over and over again 50-plus times. And Brady's got more weapons than he had a year ago in this game. You never know with Bill Belichick from week to week exactly what you're going to get from an offensive approach standpoint. But certainly this has all the makings of a blowout. You got the Giants at the Cleveland Browns. I think this game actually could be relatively competitive. I'm not saying it'd be pretty or compelling, but it could be competitive just because the Giants really haven't blown out anybody this season. They're 7 wins by an average of about 4 points. They're not dominating people, but they are finding ways to win. I think defensively, this is something I talked about early on in the season, the thinking was this team was going to get better and better over the course of the season because you did have so many new parts with a veteran coordinator. The more that those guys got a feel for each other on the field, the more that Steve Spagnuolo got an idea how to use them, the better they were going to be. And how about Landon Collins and the job that he has done throughout the course of this season, creating takeaways, making plays, being impactful. They needed that on the back end of the defense, and they finally figured out, kind of like a Cam Chancellor, not that they play the same role, but, there are certain safeties who, they're not going to be really good cover men, but if they can do more in the box, they can be underneath, they can set a physical presence, they can be effective. We're seeing the same thing, I think, beginning to happen with Keanu Neal right now in Atlanta. And Neal, they're going to need some really good football out of him with Desmond Trufant, according to ESPN, expected to have season-ending surgery for a torn pectoral muscle. Tonight's game, Kansas City at Denver, another big one in the AFC West standings. The Chiefs' offense has been just stop and start in recent weeks. I know they didn't have Alex Smith for a game. They obviously have not had Jamal Charles. Jeremy Maclin has missed time for them too. But you'd still like to think you can put up more than 14, 17 points a game. That hasn't happened. They're never going to be an explosive passing offense, but they are going to be able to be efficient. I think Andy Reid is a very good play caller. I think that they'll find their path here. I don't have much question about that, but in a game like this against a really good Denver defense, I think they've got their work cut out for them. The Broncos offense, if you look at some of the numbers, they can be kind of staggering because we go back to a year ago, and how much do we talk about the liability that the Denver offense was when they went from Peyton Manning to Brock Osweiler and back to Manning again. Turnovers was a big part of that, but if you look at the yardage, Broncos were middle of the pack a year ago. This season, they've dropped down to 27th. So they're actually less effective than that Broncos offense we were all ripping back a year ago, one that the defense was able to carry to a Super Bowl title. I don't pin that all on the quarterback change or on Trevor Siemian. I think that it was huge when they lost C.J. Anderson because that was a guy who got the tough yards for you, was able to soften up the middle of the defense, and set up the bootlegs and the play action that's such a core part of what Gary Kubiak wants to do offensively. They haven't had that. Devontae Booker is not that guy. He's more of a change of pace guy. You want to get him out in space. The Broncos lack I keep saying the word identity, but it's true with them. I think that they're still trying to figure out exactly what they're trying to be offensively or what they can do effectively. They do have more weapons in the passing game. I don't know if this is a week where you're going to really turn Trevor Siemian loose just because you probably feel fairly confident your defense is going to be able to shut down the Chiefs' offense because they've been struggling to this point in the season. But Siemian, certainly, you're going to have to see him make some more plays here, and they've got to figure out a solution in terms of their running game to be able to do that more effectively as we move forward. Monday night game, of course, it's the Packers at the Eagles. Huge game for both teams, trying to cling to some shred of relevance here. If the Packers defense can't get a stop against an Eagles offense with a rookie quarterback in Carson Wentz, with depleted running backs, and with nobody who really scares you in terms of wide receivers in the passing game, I don't know if the Packers are going to shut down anybody, and the pressure is only going to rise on Dom Capers and that entire unit. Thank you to everybody for coming out for this Facebook Live chat. And of course, you can find me normally Mondays and Friday mornings doing the Facebook Live chats on the USA Today sports page. So we'll be back, I think, on Monday morning, tomorrow morning. Man, this week has flown by. We'll see you then.